Namaskar, I'm Vyas, and today is a very exciting moment for me because we are going to be meeting someone who is embracing life with such sincere excitement as it becomes inspiring for us as well. Um, Most of us who are here in America, either from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, or any other country for that matter, we have uprooted ourselves from the land of our origin and we have rebuilt our life, so to say. Rebuilding life is an important experience for one and all. And now the trend is changing. Many kids who are born here to Indian parents are also looking at India as their future residence. And someone who is with me today also looks at India as a promising land of opportunities, as well as a land that probably has so much to share. And now stopping to continue and welcoming William to our studio. Namaste.
Namaste.
So William, tell me, when did you hear first about India?
The first time I heard about India must have been through childhood experiences with pop culture in the US, like Disney films, some television series, music, that general portrayal.
And that general portrayal gave you some image of India. Was it matching with the image which you made being in India for a year at a stretch?
No, I don't personally feel that it's a very accurate image. I think it's over-romanticized, and I think it also excludes a lot of the elements of Indian culture and Indian society, things that it has to offer. Especially the image of modernity seems to be lacking from the popular portrayals.
And what is it that you found fascinating about India while being there?
Most fascinating probably was just the people. The relationships that people build in India are on a completely different basis than they are here in the US. I was speaking with you earlier and I mentioned how I feel people are much more aware of communal resources, shared resources, and I think that they alter their lifestyles in a way which is much less geared towards personal entitlement.
Many times we hear, even in America, people say that Americans don't see world beyond America most of the time. And the general sense of awareness about life outside America, it's not that much a currency, it's not in thing for many youngsters of your age, I would say. So in your case, would you say the environment in your family or something that exposed you a little bit more to India? And also talk to us about that program which gave you the opportunity to be there for a year.
Well, I would say that my exposure to India is that program. My mother was quite involved in the Rotary Youth Exchange program, and growing up we had a number of exchange students stay in our house as members of our family. Including one student who was from Gujarat. I think that the program made me aware of a cultural plurality that a lot of Americans are not, do not subscribe to. But at the same time, I think that there is a shift in focus, and a lot of people my age, I can rattle off my brother, my roommate, my good friend of my brother's, mostly intelligent, hardworking individuals, are looking to other countries as areas of opportunity.
Talking about the way you relate to people probably varies at different places depending on the kind of cultural flow that people have imbibed in their lives. From this point of view of human relationship, as you were mentioning earlier, what is it that you see is distinctly different in a setting like India? And allow me to add another question to this. What was it that you were surprised by finding in India?
I'd like to answer the second question first, and I think the largest degree of surprise that I had was in encountering the vast diversity of Indian culture. Here in the US, typically you go to an Indian restaurant and you have quote-unquote Indian food. Whereas anywhere in India you can't get Indian food. You get Gujarati food or Jain food or South Indian food, you know. And these regional identities are extremely important to people. And I think that that we neglect that as outsiders, that we're not aware of that. So that would be the largest surprise I had.
Talk to us about, let's say, some of the representative figures of India, people who you would associate in your mind with India, whether they are present in India at the moment or you have known about them from the sphere of history or culture or whatever.
Well, it's interesting that you mentioned present and past, because I think there is indeed a rapidly changing Indian identity. So when I think of India, the country, which is only 50 years old, I think of political figures such as Jawaharlal Nehru, or even more modern figures such as Sonia Gandhi. But when you think about the identity of what it means to be Indian, you have to dig much deeper into the cultural history. So you have to look to figures like Krishna, figures like Vyasa, as well as people who have informed social opinion in India, such as Mahatma Gandhi or even Manu, for instance. It becomes necessary to look at it as a two-part identity.
Talk to us a little bit more about when you mentioned Vyasa, you were referring to Vyas. And so what do you know about him, and how would you connect the essence of Vyasa to present India?
Well, I've recently been studying Mahabharata and Ramayana. So I think that, and these two books are extremely integral to Indian culture, whether it be short stories, tales that people are telling their children in terms of giving them ethical information or explaining situations to them. If it's a question of pure entertainment, if it's a question of social structures, everything is contained within these epics. And I think that these epics are perpetuated by Indian culture. So I think that if you're trying to find some kind of essence, whether or not there is an essence, if you're trying to find some essence, the epics are a great place to start.
Epics are a great place to start. And is there any message that you see comes to you from, say, Mahabharata or Ramayana, which you may feel is relevant, whether you are in India or America or anywhere in the world?
Well, you can certainly look at the Gita from Mahabharata, and it is nothing but social instruction. And the most excellent point of the Gita is that, or its strength is that it is not specific to the time it was written in. While the Arjuna's dilemma is specific, it's more of a question of duty and responsibility, and Krishna doesn't speak just to Arjuna's problem. So I think if you look to Gita, you can also look to Ram as a hero, and all of the questions, ethical quandaries that he encountered in his quest. I think that they can be reapplied to any of today's social issues and social quandaries.
So when we want to apply any kind of knowledge in our lives, first of all we have to understand, and then we try to connect that with what is happening to us, what is happening around us. So that requires some amount of awareness or alertness on our part, and this kind of inner vigilance is probably the hallmark of the flow of Indian culture, as one may understand today. Now, talking about the vigilance in today's world, the fast pace at which we are changing, economies are also showing us different colors of different countries. India as a growing economic power is something that is talked about anywhere and everywhere, and you were also involved with some sort of business working environment in India with a family that was hosting you there. So tell us what professions you were exposed to, and what was the impression?
Well, one of the businesses that I worked with most closely was a construction chemicals producer and distribution corporation, and I think that it is very importantly indicative of this growth that you're talking about. Mostly, they worked with concrete concrete adulterants, and the amount of concrete that's used in India daily is incredible. It's stupendous, and it shows you how fast the infrastructure is being developed and how much new space people need. So some of the other businesses that I worked with were a specialty Jain catering business in Mumbai, as well as an architecture firm and a machinery tools importing. All of these, except for the catering, again, sort of speak to the growth that India is undergoing. And people who I met working with these businesses were also professionals, all in the business of India's expansion, which is really exciting.
And you also work with tailor in India?
Yes, I worked for some time in a tailor shop getting training in just gents' clothing. I've take some interest in sewing from before when I left, so I thought that as India has such an excellent tailoring industry, that it would be a great place to get information, get training.
And share with us from your point of view, because when you are working in different fields with people, first of all, when they see someone with white skin, there is an inner sort of curiosity about the person and how he would behave, and the kind of relationship which develops. But gradually then you probably must have realized that that is the first stage of your external appearance, and then there is a connection that happens which could be with anybody, anywhere. Share with us, how was it for you in India?
Well, I don't think I could describe that any better than you have just done. One thing I will point out is that I was staying in Mumbai, which is no stranger to foreigners. So if anything, I got much less of a reaction as a foreigner in India. But again, since it's the first appearance, it's your first approach when meeting an individual, it's definitely the first thing that people think about when they're meeting you. And over time, people begin to almost to forget, I think, depending on how well you immerse yourself within the culture, almost forget that your identity as a foreigner.
And were you at home in India? I believe you were, and yet tell us, what was it that made you feel so much at home that this connection or this relationship with India continues?
Yes, I was very much at home, and I thank the families that I stayed with most importantly for that. They included me in all of their family activities, whether it be dinner, going to the movies, having puja, whatever it was. I felt very much at home and at peace with the families that I lived with. And in my recent return, just about a month ago, I was immediately felt at home again as soon as my family met me at the airport. And I think a big part of it is the people who you're with, the people who you live with, make it a home. But aside from that, of course, you just become acclimated to everyday dealings. The first month or two that I spent there, I would have difficulty finding a place to make a fax or a copy. I wouldn't know where to buy shampoo. And that's the kind of thing that you just learn from living in a place. As you know, shops are different and expectations are different. You just become acclimated to the cultural norms, the social standards.
Talking about cultural norms, India is a place full of festivals, and you were also, if I say, were fortunate to have been witness as well as participant to some of the important festivals. Share with us that experience.
Well, I was there for the entire year, so I couldn't even count the number of festivals and various pujas that I attended. But for me, the two that left the strongest impression were Ganesha in.
I'm just interrupting you, and then we start off this question again. Being in India for Holi is, of course, an interesting experience, and also being in India while this 9-day festival and Garba is happening. How was it for you?
Well, Holi specifically, during Holi I was traveling. So my experience with Holi was really a one-day experience, which was, the first day, I believe, which is when most of the festivities occur. So I was, down on the road throwing color and fighting, and that was just a huge amount of fun. And that people can be so open to strangers and trust each other in such a way that allows for this activity is incredible. It's really stupendous. And of course I went to a puja that night, but as I was traveling I was mostly not with people that I knew, so I didn't feel as moved by it as I did with some other festivals that I was lucky enough to attend with family members and things like that.
So this Garba, were you also dancing?
So for Navratri, I was actually in Gujarat, which is a great place to go for Garba. I was at Baroda for most of the time, and they have an enormous Garba there. At this United Way sponsored Garba. And over the 9 nights, they had some 25,000 people. It was enormous. And I think the element of festivity was a lot of fun, and one thing that really was noticeable to me is since alcohol is prohibited in Gujarat, all these festivities, or most of these festivities, were alcohol-free. And for people to have a party, a wild, raucous party in the U.S., the presence of alcohol is ubiquitous, but it's not the case in Gujarat. So that was also a very interesting experience to see how people could celebrate without alcohol. As strange as it sounds, it really was eye-opening.
That's very interesting. And you were in Mumbai during the Ganesh festival?
I was partially in Mumbai during Ganesha, and so I took the opportunity to go out in the streets, dancing, carrying a Ganpati down to the sea. But I was also extremely fortunate in that a member of the Rotary Club, which was hosting me, took me and one other student to his native place in Maharashtra, which his father has a mango plantation there, which we stayed on. And for 3 days there was a continuous puja when all of his cousins from the village would just come through and celebrate. And the sense of community that I had there was really also, incredible feeling. And this really just the communal interactions at that point where one house could contain a family of 50 people who were all on actual familial terms is something I haven't seen anywhere else.
Amazing. Now, if you sit at home talking to your parents and you share the idea that I would like to be in India, then they say, what are you going to do there, son? So from that career point of view, what kind of opportunities do you foresee are available for someone like you in India at the moment?
Well, academically, I've been specializing in information science and Indian politics. So I think that both of these have a great a set of opportunities in India. Obviously, politics because it's where everything is going on, and information. There's a huge IT sector. I'm interested in information theory and in information delivery systems, which have sort of a universal application, because any organization needs a way to manage the overwhelmingly large and growing amount of information that we're able to manage with new technology.
Whatever your exposure has been for Indian politics, if you compare the way politicians are making things happen in America and the way they're happening in India, is there any special, distinct watermark, so to say, that you can see distinguishing these two places from the point of view of politics?
Well, the first thing that jumps to mind, and I know this isn't really positive, but the difference in corruption in the U.S. versus corruption in India, the mechanisms of corruption, and when you think about American politics and you think about lobby groups as the standard, if you visit Washington, D.C. or on K Street, where these billions of dollars are poured into romancing politicians, when you explain that this is a legitimate form of quote-unquote democracy to someone from India, they're appalled and taken aback, surprised, and it seems like massive corruption, which is legitimized, as opposed to the illegitimate form of corruption which goes on in India from the lowest level of municipal interactions and transactions to the highest organizational levels of government, which India is currently struggling with. But it's interesting because that corruption is perceived in a way that it is much less socially surprising when a traffic cop pulls you over in India and asks you for a bribe instead of a ticket. It's a very small matter and it's nothing to raise your eyebrow over. Whereas over here in the U.S., if you were to offer a bribe for that kind of thing, you would be in jail immediately. But the form that corruption takes has been really interesting to me in comparing the two.
I think that's very interesting and very valid observation, considering the fact that we recently had, and I think it still continues, Anna Hazare led movement in India. And before we concluded this part of a conversation, and I think when you come back with more experiences from India with you and maybe a few more things to share, probably we'll have you again with us here at ITV Studio. But just talking about Indian politics at the moment, what is it that you consider appears to be promising, which is going to take the country forward?
Well, what I really like about Indian politics is their form of parliamentary democracy and their multi-party system that forces political parties to form coalitions and work together, as opposed to, I guess everything is in the relief of, for me, American politics, where we have a two-party system. And the fact that parties have to engage with each other in India to achieve any kind of political or social success is a very promising notion, that the idea of cooperation for success as opposed to opposition for success.
Very, very nice, William. When you sit with William, or for that matter with someone who has been open to his surroundings, to himself or herself, as well as open in seeing a little bit more than many of us are normally accustomed to, it makes a fascinating experience of the kind which is enriching. And we wish lots of good experiences your way on your relationship with life, with India. And thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you.
This is Ashok Vyas thanking William, as well as all of you for joining us.